I'm hanging up. Sorry about that, everybody. We don't have the best internet connection here at our place. But I was saying I went to Book Expo America last year, and my book had just come out. It'd been out about a month, and I can remember sitting at the tables. I sat with the owner of Octavia Books in New Orleans, where I just was, um, and I remember watching people get nominated for these awards and win these awards, just thinking what an honor it would be to be nominated, much less to win. And I was actually a finalist for the adult debut novel, which was won by the novel Snow Child, which I know was a huge favorite. So that made me feel, amazing. Mackenzie asks, I'm stranded on a desert island and I only have 3 books in my suitcase. What are they? I would have Look Homeward Angel by Thomas Wolfe. I would have Cain by Jean Toomer. And I would have either The Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison or, gosh, what else would I take? Something big, probably. Maybe like the collected stories of Chekhov or Raymond Carver or someone like that. Sharon asked, did you know that this novel would be so well received and resonate with so many readers? No, I didn't know if anybody would actually ever read it. I'm still shocked when I get an email from readers, and I love getting email from readers. You can email me through my website, which is wileycash.com. But I'm always shocked when I get an email from a reader who's actually like read the book and doesn't know me. That's always a huge surprise. So I had no idea that anybody would buy it, and I certainly had no idea that it would be well received. I feel really lucky because that's the kind of thing you don't really think about. The goal is to publish a book, so you're not thinking beyond that. And then the book comes out, and the goal is to hope that somebody's going to read it, so you don't think beyond that. And then you get a review, and then you don't think about the paperback. All these things happen that are just continually surprising and continually wonderful. Shelley wants to know what book is on my nightstand right now. I have Brady Udall's novel, The Lonely Polygamist. I was at Boise State University 2 weeks ago giving a reading, and Brady teaches out there, so I picked up a copy of his book. I went out there to visit my friend Mitch Whelan. The Savvy Bookworm asks, who is your favorite character in A Land More Kind Than Home, and why? I would say my favorite character is the grandfather, Jimmy Hall. I think that he's the most well-rounded character, and that whenever he's on the page, you don't know if he's going to do something positive or something negative. Is he going to take care of Jess, or is he going to be a drunk mess and mess everything up? And I also really like the character Jess's friend, Joe Bill. I love him because he's a little kid who's been bullied, and that has made him into a bully. And I can remember kids like that, like in my neighborhood, being aware, even as a child, thinking that kid is mean because somebody's been mean to them. And I like how Joe Bill kind of evolves in the novel. Prairie Dawn says, I loved your book, but I don't understand the title and how it related to the story. Well, A Land More Kind Than Home, I was hoping that it would hint at some kind of deliverance, some kind of place beyond where we are now. And that's what Miss Lau, Adelaide Lau, hints at or talks about at the end, this idea of deliverance, of salvation, of these believers being delivered out of the wilderness. And the idea of something being a place more kind than home struck me as being a place that is more nurturing or safer or better or brighter than where you are now. And I feel like all the characters in the novel, from Jess to Adelaide to Clem to Jimmy to Ben, all of them are hoping for something better. 4D563 said, I often pick up a book by its cover. Is your cover what you pictured? I didn't really picture anything. I feel like I wanted kind of a rural landscape. And for the hardcover, I knew I wanted earth tones. I knew I wanted stuff that was, oranges and browns and yellows and more, either like fiery or rusty colors. And so when I saw the cover of the hardback, I thought it was perfect. And now with the paperback with the little boy and the blue, blue's my favorite color. and I think the paperback perfectly communicates the feel of the book. It's sunset. There's a barbed wire fence that's kind of threatening. There's a tree hanging over the boy's head that's kind of ominous, but there's a solitary kid there, and so I really like that cover too. So I don't know that I would ever imagine them with that kind of clarity, but I love both of them a lot. Mina wants to know, or Hulawanki asks, we have some amazing books written by Southern authors who never wrote another book. Are you cooking up another one for us? I am. I'm working on a second novel. It's supposed to be out in late January or early February 2014. And it is about a washed up minor league baseball player who kidnaps his two daughters from a foster home in Gastonia, North Carolina, which is my hometown. And it's got three narrators, like A Land More Kind Than Home. It takes place over about 2 weeks. So there's some similarities, but I tell people that in this novel, the second novel, the dark spots are darker and the bright spots are brighter. So Mina wants to know, was any of the characters in A Land More Kind Than Home inspired by people you've met in real life? No, not really. Adelaide, she was modeled in part on my grandmother. His middle name is Adeline, my paternal grandmother, Lucille Adeline Cash. She was very country, she was very fiery, but she was also very sweet and very nurturing. And I think some of me as a kid goes into Jess, who, kind of looks at the world with a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of caution. He's also his brother's keeper. I always felt like I was my brother's keeper growing up. I have a brother who's 3 years younger than me, so I always felt a little bit like Jess in that respect. Passion for Fiction wants to know, do you read your reviews? If so, does it help or hinder how you proceed with your writing? I do. I do read reviews. I don't go searching, like I don't Google the book title and the word review. But whenever I would get a review, say in Washington Post or somewhere, I would read it absolutely, and I'm always interested in what readers are going to say online. Um, and when people don't like the book, or if they don't like the book, it doesn't really bother me. Um, and when they love the book, it doesn't really go to my head too much. My wife and I decided early on the best thing about this whole experience was going to be having a book come out. That everything good couldn't be better than that, and that we couldn't ever allow anything bad to touch how incredible that the moment of learning that the book had sold would be. BookTrib says, "Hey Wiley, I heard your parents are joining in tonight. Would you like to say hi?" Yeah, my mom down in Oak Island, North Carolina, I think, is at a book club tonight with their neighbor across the street, Jackie Goldfuss. So if Jackie's book club is watching, hello, hey mom. I'm sure my dad is not there. He's probably at home watching. Let's see who's playing right now. I think that Chicago and Brooklyn might be playing right now in the playoffs. That's probably what he's doing. Mike Maley says, "What is the most rewarding part of writing to you? What is the most rewarding part of writing for you?" I would say it's probably personal. When I put in a good day's work, I feel really good. I feel the same way people feel when they go to the gym, or when they work in the yard all day, or when they, spend a satisfying afternoon doing something they love to do. So I feel really positive and healthy whenever I get a good day of work in. So that's probably the most rewarding thing to me. Um, and that's a personal thing, but an interior thing. But an exterior thing, probably meeting people who have read the book. As I said earlier, I'm always shocked when somebody's read the book and I don't know them. That always really, really surprises me, and that's incredibly rewarding. And also speaking to students, I've the past couple of weeks I've been traveling around to community college and universities and junior colleges, actually around the country. And when students come up to me and say, I hate to read, but I enjoyed your book. That makes me feel really good. V.L. Grossman says, you've been referred to as the Justin Timberlake of American literature. What is your take on that? Maybe your next novel can be a musical, or at least in your head it can be. The Justin Timberlake thing is haunting. My friends, that's the greatest thing that's ever happened to many of my friends, that I was referred to as the Justin Timberlake of American literature. They love making fun of me for that. But deep down inside, everybody kind of wants to be the Justin Timberlake of something. So it's actually kind of makes me feel good. I think Justin Timberlake's actually pretty cool. Passion for fiction. If you could date any character from literature, who would it be and why? Um, that's a good question. Gosh, if I could date any character from literature. A couple of months ago, around Valentine's Day, I put an essay on my blog at wileycash.com about literary crushes and characters that I I kind of liked, that I had crushes on. And one of them was Daisy Miller, the ugly American who actually isn't so ugly. Um, Lady Brett Ashley from The Sun Also Rises. Gosh, Zenobia from Blacktail Romance. All these really strong, determined, kind of independent females. 4D563 says, do you see yourself in any of your characters? I think so. I think that a little bit of my relationship with my wife goes into Clem's relationship with his wife. They're kind of flirty and kind of silly, and they cut up with each other. And my wife and I do that a lot. I think a lot of me goes into Jess's character, as I mentioned earlier, kind of the mystery of the world, those kinds of things. But other characters, I think a lot of my characters probably notice the same things I do in the landscape. Um, so that's probably the extent of it. Somebody says, Liz1820 says, what's your favorite thing about participating in book clubs? One thing I love about book clubs is their honesty. By the time I Skype with book clubs a lot, and say they meet at 7 and I'll join them at 7:30, and they've already had about 2 or 3 glasses of wine, and they're just brutally honest. And I always get a kick out of the questions they ask me. They'll say, oh, I hated Julie. Why did you make this happen? Or why did you do this to Ben? And their questions are so honest, because they're so invested in the book, because they've purchased the book, they've read it, they've thought about questions to talk about their friends with, they've invested time and energy in it, and they have a real sense of ownership. And that's how you should feel when you read a book. You should feel like that experience is yours, and that book has some measure of accountability to you. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about book clubs. Hula Monkey says, are you in your office where you write? Can you show us around? Not really. I'll show you my desk real quick. I don't want to show you my office because it's dirty, but that's my desk. I write on a desktop computer. We have some orchids. That's pretty much the extent of it. That is Tom Franklin's new novel, The Tilted World. He and his wife Beth Ann Finley, who's an acclaimed poet, wrote a book together, and I'm looking forward to reading that. And I don't know if you'll be able to see across the street or not, the hillside out there. Maybe. But you can kind of see the road and the hillside across the street. But that's all I can disclose at this time in terms of the office and the way it looks. Marjorie Tequila wants to know, when did you first realize you wanted to be an author? I think I was young. I grew up reading a lot, as I said, and I started writing like really bad poetry when I was in junior high school because I listened to The Doors a lot and thought Jim Morrison was the greatest poet ever. And then I got to college and realized that I was a terrible poet, and Jim Morrison was also a terrible poet. He might have actually been worse than me. And so I wanted to keep writing, so I thought I would try writing short stories. And I actually went to the undergraduate program that I went to, UNC Asheville, because they had a degree in creative writing. They had a major track in creative writing, so that's why I chose to go to school there. So I think from an early age, I realized that's what I wanted to do. C Shoe 115 says, "How would you describe your book?" I think if I could describe my book in one word, I would say atmospheric. I really wanted to give readers a strong sense of the mountains of North Carolina and especially Madison County. And so I really wanted the readers to feel as if they were stepping inside of this place and inhabiting this place, this environment with the narrators and the characters. Mackenzie says, "What is the best movie you've seen that was based on a book?" Gosh, I don't know. That's a good question. There's a lot of great movies that have been books. I didn't read The Hunger Games, but I really liked the movie a lot. I thought the movie was really, really good, um, especially because I just read a nonfiction book about North Korea and North Korea labor camps. So I was really interested in how the labor camp and the Hunger Games was presented. And the city in the Hunger Games reminded me of Pyongyang because, the beautiful and the educated and the wealthy get to live in the city. And then everybody outside the city has this kind of meager survival. Um, so I thought it was really good. I think To Kill a Mockingbird is a wonderful movie. I think that Lonesome Dove, the miniseries, is really, really good. I really love that novel. I think Toni Morrison's Beloved is probably one of the books that I read, and when I saw the movie, it was exactly how I pictured the book. 4D563 says, "Do you have a daily writing routine?" I do when I'm in the middle of working on something or getting a lot of work done. I like to get up, early in the morning if I can, if I'm not coming off the road, and I like to start trying to work around 9 and work till noon, and then have some lunch, and then come back and review what I've done that afternoon. So I like to have my butt in the chair for about 6 hours because I feel like if you're working, in an office, that's about how much time you'd spend sitting down anyway. Um, let's see. Savvy Bookworm says, "I love your book cover. Did you have any say in what it looked like?" I think I probably could have. I think I probably could have had veto power, but I've been really fortunate that I love both the hardcover and the paperback versions of the book, and I didn't feel like the veto power was necessary. And I'm assuming I would have even had it. As a debut author, you kind of are just thankful that you've even been invited to the party, and you don't care what kind of food they serve or what kind of music they play. You're just kind of happy to be inside the door. And I've had a really fortunate experience, and I feel really lucky that I've had such excellent people around me and great book covers and great designers and a great audiobook. And I feel really fortunate that this has happened. Andrew Mossy says, "What is your favorite part about visiting bookstores and libraries across the Southeast?" Um, Visiting bookstores and libraries across the Southeast. I've done a lot of that. I've been all through North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi last summer and this spring. And I think that my favorite thing has been just re-immersing myself in the South and hearing those familiar accents and eating that familiar food. And I've already talked about the effect that the booksellers have had on me. I also have such great respect for libraries because I'm a product of a public library system in Gastonia, North Carolina, and my public library had a huge effect on me. And we had an event at the public library in Gastonia this past summer, and we had a huge turnout. And it meant the world to me that so many people that I'd known growing up came out to my event. So I love going out to bookstores and libraries in the Southeast. Mike Maley says, "Do you prefer reading fiction or nonfiction?" That's a great question. I think I prefer them either one at different times. I do a lot of research when I'm writing, and I read obviously a lot of nonfiction. But when I'm writing, I also read a lot of fiction to help me problem solve. Um, my background's in literature, so I've had to read a lot for school and stuff. So if I'm struggling with a scene, I like knowing kind of where to go, and using other novels and short stories as kind of reference books to kind of learn how to do things. But I love reading books. I've gotten to meet a lot of writers, and I enjoy reading books by people that I know. Friends like Jess Walter, who wrote Beautiful Ruins, or Ben Fountain, Bill Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, or David Abrams has a great book called Fobbit. Lydia Netzer's got a book called Shine, Shine, Shine. These are books that I loved over the past year, and it's wonderful that I've gotten to be friends with people who have written them. It's a thrill to pick up a book and love it, and also love the person who wrote it. Sharon Berger says, "How has being a known author changed your perspective and outlook?" I don't know, because I've never thought of myself as a known author. I think unless your name is Stephen King or John Grisham or Toni Morrison or Maya Angelou, nobody really cares that much who you are. And I think, when you're sitting beside somebody on a plane and you say, "I'm a writer," and they say, "Oh, have you read 50 Shades of Grey?" And, "Did you write that?" "Oh, you didn't?" "Oh, who cares?" So it really hasn't changed my outlook or perspective so much. And it hasn't made anything easier. It hasn't made writing easier. It hasn't made submitting stories to journals easier. It hasn't made hearing criticism from my editor any easier. Nothing's really changed. But it doesn't mean it hasn't been a wonderful experience. But it really hasn't changed my outlook on writing or on the publishing world at all. I know more about both of them, but they're still hard. They're still difficult. Liz1820 says, "Do you have any funny writing quirks?" I don't know that I do. I like to try to write. If I'm getting in a good day of writing, get in 1,000 good words that I'm satisfied with. I try to write on my desktop computer that doesn't have internet access. I've recently been working on a laptop, so I downloaded this program called Freedom that you can buy for $10 that locks you out of the internet. So I've been doing that a little more. But funny writing quirks, I really don't have any. I don't think. 4D563 says, "What do you like to do in your downtime when you're not writing?" I read a lot, actually. I like to watch sports. I love basketball and football and baseball. Um, my wife and I travel a lot. We went to Hawaii for a nice vacation in December and no November and part of December. Um, and I've just been traveling so much for the book. I was in Boise 2 weeks ago, and then last week I was all through North Carolina and Tennessee. So I don't feel like I've really had too much downtime um, in the past year. I've really tried to carve out space for downtime and kind of live in the moment. That's something I've been struggling with for the past couple of months, actually. If your book, Robin F says, "If your book were to be turned into a movie, who would you want to play the main characters?" I would love to see Gene Hackman play the grandfather Jimmy. I'd love to see someone like, Sissy Spacek play Adelaide. I'd like to see Clint Eastwood play Clem, or Tommy Lee Jones, or Robert Duvall. I'd like to see someone like Viggo Mortensen play Ben, and someone like Jessica Chastain play Julie. Um, but they could be actors that nobody had ever heard of, and I'd still be really excited. Let's see. V.L. Grossman says, "You refuse to do a British accent in your top 10 reasons your book club will love a land more kind than home. How about doing one now?" No, I can't do that. My wife always jokes that that I have like one accent that I do. I have two accents. One of them is a Boston slash New York slash everything who lives above Maryland accent, and then the other one is a British Australian Jamaican accent, and that's kind of my approach to both national and international voices. Passion for Fiction says zombies or aliens. I don't know what to make of that. I don't read a lot of science fiction. Um, I know the zombies are really popular right now. The Walking Dead, which is really popular. Um, but I don't read a lot of science fiction. So I guess if I had to choose one, would I watch a zombie movie or an alien movie? Probably zombies. I think they're scarier. Mackenzie says, do you think that Twitter and Facebook have helped you connect on a different level with your readers? Yeah, absolutely. I think just having a website does. My Twitter handle is at Wiley Cash. I loved it. Last week I was at Gardner Webb University, and I was getting all these questions via Twitter from students like a week before I even arrived there, and it was awesome. And so when I met people, they'd say, "Hey, I wrote you on Twitter," and I'd say, "Oh, I remember that question. Thank you." And I think that's a really cool thing. I mean that I can reach out to readers and readers can reach out to me. That's been a super cool thing about this. So I think Facebook and Twitter have definitely helped me connect. And like I said, I love getting emails from readers. Shelley says, "Do you ever get a serious case of writer's block? How do you overcome it?" Um, I don't know that I get a case of writer's blocks. Excuse me. I don't think I get a case of writer's block as much as I get a case of just not wanting to work. Um, and I kind of look at writing like any other job. So I think you can always write something. A friend of mine, who I mentioned a little bit earlier, named Jess Walter, has a bunch of books. He's got a bunch of articles. He's got a bunch of short stories. And I asked him, I said, you're not old. How have you written so much? And he said, because I believe I can always write something. If I don't feel like working on my novel, I'll work on this short story. If I don't feel like doing that, I'll work on this article. I'll work on this nonfiction piece. I'll work on whatever. I believe you can always work on something. I think you just have to have the will and the determination to do that. I had a professor in college who said, if you can do something, if you can sit down and make yourself do something for 5 minutes, then you've just proved to yourself that you can do it all day long. And I really believe that. Whenever I'm saying I have writer's block, what that really means to me is I can't work right now. Prairie Dawn says, what is your favorite food? Gosh, we eat a lot of Mexican food. I love Indian food. I love sushi. But I think the food that I find most satisfying is probably pizza. I love just pepperoni pizza. So that might be my favorite food. If you could go back and give your 15-year-old self some advice, Hula Monkey says, if you could go back and give your 15-year-old self some advice, what would it be? And I think it would be stop taking yourself so seriously. But that's what 15-year-olds do. They take themselves very seriously. And I think I would also tell my 15-year-old self to stop pretending like I understand things that I don't. I would check out, books by like Arthur Rimbaud and read these like this dense, dark poetry, this French poetry, and just think like, oh, I'm so smart only because I'm reading this. But I didn't really understand it. I should have been reading things that were more age appropriate and trying to figure out how stories work, how characters work, and how setting works instead of just thinking that I was smarter than everybody else. That's the advice I would give myself. 4D563 says, is there any question you wish someone had asked you but didn't? I don't know. No, I've gotten so many good questions, both today and on the road and over email and Twitter, that I can't think of one question that I haven't been asked that I wish I would have been asked. Mackenzie says, which character from To Kill a Mockingbird do you relate to the most and why? Gosh, which one would it be? Maybe not Jim. Jim actually reminds me of my brother-in-law, who I seriously doubt is watching this, so I can say he's like, rough and tumble and always getting injured and is always like doing something a little bit dangerous. And when I think, think of my brother-in-law, that's what I think of. And also my brother to a certain degree. I'd probably say Scout, I guess, because I can remember, seeing the world through the eyes of a child that's kind of stepped back and is kind of observing things and not participating in things so much. And that's kind of the kind of kid I was. I observed a lot. C Shu 115 says, "What did you study in college?" In my undergraduate, I studied English and creative writing, and I minored in history. And it was just kind of a general world literature degree with a track in creative writing, and my track was fiction writing. And the historical area that interested me the most was Southern history, specifically Appalachian history. Mike Maley says, "If you had only one more book to write, or conversely only one more you could read, what would it be about? Your ultimate story." I'm thinking now my third novel, which I haven't started writing or really even conceptualizing that much yet, may be about this famous mill strike in my hometown of Gastonia, North Carolina, and about the people who came down from the mountains in the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century, to work in these textile mills. So if I could write one more book, I think that would be the one I would want to write. I would want to tell the story of those people who came down from the mountains with this great promise held in front of them that never materialized. Shelley says, "What are some of the most common questions your students ask you during class?" Questions students ask me during class. When I'm teaching or speaking at a school, students want to ask me questions about plot things, like why did the end in this way? They want to ask me things like, why did you choose to narrate from three different perspectives? And I tell them that I chose three perspectives because I wanted the story to have a roundness to it that one perspective won't give it. I thought Jess represented the emotional component of the novel. Adelaide represented the spiritual component of the novel, and Clem represented the rational component of the novel. And those three voices together could give the reader a true portrayal of this community. As far as plot things and characters' motivations, I kind of trust the characters to do what I think they genuinely would do, and I try to leave my fingerprints as vague on the novel and on the plot as possible, so the reader doesn't ever feel like I'm forcing characters to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. Passion for Fiction says, "Are there any movies that you just can't wait to see?" Gosh, I'm so out of the loop. I don't know. I don't know of anything that's coming out. The new Mark Wahlberg movie about the weightlifters looks really funny. I think that we'd like to see that one. I think it comes out Friday, and we want to go see The Place Beyond the Pines or The Place Behind the Pines with Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper, but that's not playing where we live. We might see it next week in Pittsburgh. One of the best movies I've seen recently, the best movie I think I saw last year was Silver Linings Playbook. I thought that movie was exceptional. V.O. Grossman says, "What were you doing when you found out that you were on the New York Times bestsellers list?" I was driving across the state of West Virginia from Huntington back to Morgantown, eating a cheeseburger from McDonald's. My book had been out for about 2 weeks, and I wondered if anybody was ever going to buy a copy when my editor called me and told me that it had actually debuted on the New York Times bestsellers list. So that was a shock. 4D563 says, "If you couldn't be a writer anymore, what profession would you take up?" I like teaching, but I also like doing stuff with my hands, and I think I would like to do something outside. I don't know, home renovation. Maybe I've got a little experience doing that. I think I'd be more drawn to something physical. Like if somebody said you can no longer be a professional writer, I may say, okay, I'll write at night and on the weekend, and during the day I'll do something to keep my body active. I think that I would be more inclined to do something like that. Savvy Bookworm says, "When do you do your best writing? Early riser or night owl?" Definitely early in the morning. I'd say between like 10 and 2 or in the morning, or maybe in the afternoon, like 2 to 4. I'm not somebody, I don't enjoy staying up late, and I never ever write when I'm up late. I'll read if I stay up late, but I don't like writing when I'm up late. Robin F says, how do you get started? I feel like I have a book in me, but just do not know how to begin. The first line I ever wrote for A Land More Kind Than Home was from Jess's perspective. And the line was, I didn't know Pastor Chambliss had killed my brother until later that night. And I got hung up there and I couldn't get Jess to say anything else. And so I started exploring other ways to tell the story. And I tried to find characters who could tell this story authentically and honestly. And that's kind of how I got started. But a lot of the time I'll start with an image. The novel that I'm working on now begins with a 12-year-old girl sliding into third base and standing up and seeing her long-lost father in the bleachers down the first base line. And she thinks, man, why is he here? And that opening came to me because my wife would tell me stories about when she was a kid, her dad would teach her how to slide into bases because she was not a good, base runner. Didn't know how to slide into base. And so I always was really struck by the image of a father teaching his daughter how to slide into base. And that kind of grew into this opening scene for this novel. So I always kind of start with an image that I can describe, and not a plot. I think when you sit down with the plot, it's too overwhelming. You can't put words around a plot, but you can put words around an image, around something that you can visually see. You can describe it. Mackenzie says, do you ever get nervous before appearing at a book club or doing an interview? No, I don't get nervous. I feel pressure to make sure everybody has a good time, or make sure that I give a good reading, or that I answer the questions well. But I don't feel nervous. I don't get an upset stomach or a dry mouth or anything like that. But I do feel pressure when somebody's bought my book and driven to the bookstore, or driven to a friend's house for their book club. I do feel pressure to make certain that they're happy they've done those things. Passion for Fiction said, you studied under Ernest Gaines. Can you tell us a little bit about how the experience shaped your writing career? Absolutely. I studied under him in Lafayette, Louisiana, and he's from Louisiana, but he left that place when he was 15 because there were no schools for African American children. He was born in 1933 and left Louisiana in 1948 and went out to California with his parents. But once he left Louisiana, he couldn't stop thinking about it. And he always wrote about Louisiana. And now he's back living in Louisiana. He moved back permanently, I believe, in 2003 or 2000 maybe. So he wrote about Louisiana only because he left it. And I think I used him as a model and decided that I would write about North Carolina after leaving it. I still don't live in North Carolina. I live in West Virginia right now. And I think that because I've spent so much time missing North Carolina, that I'll always feel compelled to write about it. Let's see. In a few minutes here, we're going to announce the winners of the copies of A Land More Kind Than Home. I think we had a lot of people registered to win books, so that'll be cool. Liz1820 says, do you have to have any snacks while you write? Chips, chocolate, or pretzels? No, I like to have water or coffee or something like that. But I always look for a reason to get up from the desk so I can go downstairs and get a snack instead of having them here. Prairie Dawn says, were any of the characters in your book created out of people you know? I mentioned earlier that Adelaide was modeled loosely after my paternal grandmother, whose middle name was Adeline. And some of me goes into Jess's character. The novel's set in 1986. I was 9, like Jess, in 1986. My younger brother and I played outside just like Jess and Joe Bill and Christopher do. Mackenzie, which do you think is easier to write, fiction or nonfiction? I think fiction's much easier to write. I've had to write some personal essays since the book came out, and those are torturous. They're so hard. To be honest about yourself and about what you think, I think is an incredibly difficult thing. And I think it's easier to kind of hide behind fiction in some ways. Robin says, what famous author would you want to meet if you could? dead or alive. I would like to meet. Who would I like to meet? I'd like to meet, like John Grisham, just because I've always heard he's super nice. I would like to meet Thomas Wolfe and kind of talk to him about North Carolina and what he thinks about it. I've really been honored to meet, a lot of writers that I've long admired. Clyde Edgerton, Fred Chappell, Robert Morgan, people that I looked up to, Bobby Ann Mason, and I looked up to these people for so long, and it was a real shock to meet them. Shelly says, "Have you had any weird, crazy fan encounters?" No, no. I've had weird questions, uh, or I've had I don't even know if they're weird questions, but questions that just kind of caught me off guard. But no, nobody crazy that I was didn't feel safe around or thought they're going to follow me home or something like that. I haven't had any of that. I do get strange emails. I got a very strange email one time that I can't even describe about. I don't even want to say what it's about. Just a very strange email from a guy that had a connection to Lafayette that was bizarre. Sometimes I get emails that begin, "I know you don't answer your own emails, but I'm sending this one anyway." And I'll always write back and say, "Actually, I do answer my own emails, and thank you for the email." Um, but nothing strange. Um, what are three things that people don't normally know about you? Probably first, I've done a lot of this social media stuff and the videos and the trailers and the top 10 stuff. I'm pretty shy when it comes down to it. I feel like I'm an introvert, and you might not know that. What are three things that people don't normally know about you? They're always surprised that I live in West Virginia and I don't live in North Carolina. And they are surprised that I don't have kids, that I write about kids, and we don't have children. Um, 4D563 says, "Have you spent a lot of time researching for your novels?" Yeah, I have. For the Landmore Kind and Home and the novel I'm working on now, I've spent a lot of time researching them. Prairie Dawn, "Are you left or right-handed?" I am left-handed. Hula Monkey says, "Do you have any pets in your house?" I do. We have a cat named Murphy, and she was in here a little bit ago. I was gonna put her on the screen, but she ran off. Sharon says, "What do you think about the future of books, reading in libraries?" Sharon's probably might be referencing the ebook phenomenon. Um, I think libraries are always going to be intellectual centers because people always need a place to meet and discuss ideas, to help each other, to tutor each other, to give guidance when it comes to things like filling out tax information or learning how to read or learning how to write. People are always going to need physical places to go for that. And I think libraries will always be important to communities for that reason. Um, but I think that I'm not so scared about the future of publishing or books as some people are. I liken ebooks to just a different format, like when music went from, you know, records to 8 tracks to cassette tapes to CDs to MP3s. I've never downloaded a song on an MP3, but I still love music. I still buy CDs. I still listen to the radio. I still like songs, but I don't, trade in the new technology. Passion for Fiction says, "After writing this book, do you feel like you have come any closer to uncovering all of the mysteries of Christianity?" I don't think I've come closer to uncovering the mysteries of Christianity, but I do think I have a little bit better understanding now of why people need faith in their lives and how that can be both a positive um, thing for someone like Adelaide and a negative thing for someone like Julie. So I do feel like I've come a little bit closer to understanding that. I think we're drawing close to a close here, and I think we're going to be announcing the winners of the books. Well, before we do, V.O. Grossman says, "How did you meet your wife?" We met at a piano bar called Rum Runners, um, in Wilmington, North Carolina, in the summer of 2005, and we've been together since. And Passion for Fiction says, "What's your favorite city?" I would probably say Asheville, North Carolina, is my favorite city. Thank you to everyone for submitting these questions. I really appreciate y'all taking the time. The official winners are for the books. The books are 4D 563, Mina DeCaro, Sharon Berger, Mike Maley, Susan Stokes, Desmond Warzel, Prairie Dawn, Barbara Green, C. Shu 115, and Marjorie Tequila. You have won copies of A Land More Kind Than Home, and I really appreciate y'all tuning in. If the winners will please email BookTrib at booktrib.com with their mailing addresses, you can claim your prize. It's BookTrib at booktrib.com. Thank you so much. This was a really great hour for me. I really appreciate it.